Right side, Jim.
No, they actually have looks good. That is actually called style. So that's a cheap shot. Can I borrow those sunglasses that were sitting over there? I want to need them.
Maybe that's what it was.
Talk about me laying on somebody else. That's exactly what that is.
How you doing?
Oh, message.
There we go. Okay, the clock says 1 o'clock. I am John Stevens, and welcome to the 7th meeting of the I-77 Express Lanes Local Advisory Group. This started back in January, as I'm sure many people around the table can recall. It was a lot cooler than today. And so I'm the facilitator, and I'll say a bit more about my roles with some introductions. The key thing for both our audience and anyone new online is this group has been put together for this particular purpose, to analyze the 2017 Mercator Report on options to consider about the I-77 Express lanes, and to assess those changes in the scope and P3 contract. And especially for today, it is indeed to give your advice, your best thoughts to Secretary Trogdon. So this is the purpose for the folks around the table here. For our introductions, I'd like to start with Commissioner Puckett in just a second. You can say who you are, what group you're with. We'll go around the table here, finishing with Dr. Milich, and then get some other introductions of some staff who've supported the process. So, Mr. Puckett, please.
Jim Puckett, McWhirter County.
Pat Copeland, County Commissioner at Large.
Jeff McNeely, Howard County Commissioner.
Greg Phipps, South City Council member, Colleen
John Fuller, Lake Mormon Chamber.
Jim Taylor, the Mercator Advisors.
Jim Trogdon, North Carolina Department of Transportation.
Bo Memory, North Carolina Turnpike Authority.
Mike Russell, Huntersville.
Brandon Trigo, Huntersville Chamber.
Rusty Knox, Mayor Davidson.
Michael Miltic. Cornelius, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you for correcting me.
It happens all the time.
So there's been other folks, some of which will be presenting, others will be resources. So I'd like for the folks who are part of the Turnpike Authority or the department or consultants to introduce themselves. I'll start with them.
Bill Schwab, RSMH.
Thomas Glenn Fakla, RSMH. Adam Dawson with RSMH. David Roy Turnpike.
Carly Oleksic, NCDOT Communications. Nicole Meister, NCDOT.
Okay. And for our other audience, I know Carly was passing out additional agendas, so you can see what's going on if people need that, and we're about to do that in just a second. And then finishing with me, I'm from UNC Chapel Hill School of Government, and have been co-facilitating the work of this group with my colleague Tate Carlson. You only get half a loaf today, but I think I'll try to make you get enough of a sandwich out of that. So, again, familiar for the folks around the table, just some common rules of courtesy or expectation. The one thing is we get to our 2 o'clock thing about sharing the air, just want to make sure everyone has an equal opportunity as members of the group to summarize and really focus what's most important that they wish to share with the Secretary for the latter part. And that there's the other things are really towards less important given the back and forth, that this is the last formal meeting. The Secretary will, at the end, comment again about the ability for this group to come back in a different form, maybe with others across the summer. So the agenda you have on paper in front of you with a handout or two. Members of the advisory group also got some additional information by email, trying to follow up on the meeting back on April 16th. And so where we're going to go is, as soon as we're done here, reviewing the options that were presented last time and trying to get to your assessment, given what the staff has been able to do since the last meeting. But then primarily look at all the options, trying to present them in a summarized form, but in a way that at least tries to feed back to you at least what we think we've heard in terms of which options are of greatest interest, which ones are of little or no interest, and which ones are still might need to be evaluated. So that's the first two parts. And then the main part, no later than 2 o'clock, is turning to this group one by one, being able to have up to about 3 minutes to say, here's what I think, here's the best way forward, here's how I look at the options. And then the secretary will end a little before 3 o'clock. Questions about our agenda, advisory group members?
Thank you to the media for being here, to the information to the people.
Yep, okay. And so now I turn it over to Bill for the first part.
Thanks, John. So as John mentioned, we wanted to go over some of the options we heard last time, the newer type options, to make sure we're clear on what those are and really how we're moving forward in the further evaluation of options. So what this graphic shows is the corridor with a line diagram at the top. In the middle, the light green is the express lanes or HOV lanes represented, and the blue is the general purpose lane. So the existing corridor had 4 general purpose lanes in the south end going to 3 and an HOV lane, and then north of exit 19 carry 2 general purpose lanes throughout. So the current proposed project basically adds 2 express lanes throughout until it gets to exit 28 where it adds 1 express lane. So what we had heard was really 3 distinct options. One of the first ones, we're calling them option G now. Option G has hardening of shoulders. And so we had heard a couple of different things, and there may be some challenges in hardening shoulders and making them useful and so forth. So we wanted to make sure we looked and looked at several different options. So we looked at, we're talking about hardening shoulders from exit 23 to 33, and then also north of 28, and again, this is in both directions, and then all the way through to the north end of the project to see what combinations work and what the impacts could be and so forth. So we weren't sure if there was any other hardening shoulders that were being represented from the discussion last time. And then we looked at, or that we had talked about an option H we called, which is adding 1 general purpose lane in each direction from exit 28 to 36. And then option I really seemed to be a combination. If you recall, option C1, which was modifying the lane configurations between 23 and 28 from a 2 general purpose lanes and 2 express lanes to a 3+1 concept. And it seems that option I is really a combination of what we talked about for C1 and option H, where it adds a general purpose lane north of 28. So we wanted to make sure that we had those correct from the discussion last time, so that when we move forward, we're focused on the right things.
I just had a question, is on option I, one of the things I think that was kind of put out there as an option is replacing, right? If we can only get, we don't know if we get 3 or 4 each way, right? If we can only get 3, replacing that toll lane and removing the toll lane, if that makes sense, right? So
right,
that's
so
what we're talking about, just to be clear, not necessarily adding 1 general purpose lane, it's converting the existing toll lane to general purpose. And then if people want a toll lane, that can be done in the future.
Okay, so basically end the tolling at 28.
Correct.
Okay. We'll add that as a sub-option to make sure that.
If you couldn't get the space. If you couldn't get the space to get a lane in the
Right. I think it was clear that you really wanted to consider 3 general purpose lanes throughout the length of the corridor. And this is a way to do that in varying degrees and depending on impacts and so forth, that'll be part of the evaluation.
Yeah, and option H, that doesn't include a 3rd general purpose lane between 19 and 23 according to the way you diagrammed it there, does it? You just added general purpose lane to 28.
28 to 36.
So you would still be 2 and 2 through 19 and 28 under option H.
Yeah.
Okay, just clarify.
Would that not be a model? I mean, if our goal is to get three throughout.
Yeah, that would be about.
We really need to.
Yeah, I don't think I could support that option.
Should remove that, that we need three, because we're three at one end and three at the other.
So sub-options could be adding or modifying the express lane from a single express lane to a, or from a double express lane to a single,
That's
to get you to
option I.
3, right? Throughout.
3 and 1 instead of 2.
Yeah, well, even C1 was from 23
Of
to
course,
28.
the other option would be to convert both express lanes and end tolling at 19, but that would be a reach. I know,
So option H could be add a general purpose lane in each one of those segments. So based on the feedback we've seen and heard and went back to tapes and the flip charts that John had, we wanted to somehow summarize, because there's a lot of options now that we're looking at. We want to be able to focus as we move forward from here. So we looked at the options and what the feedback was in the previous meetings, and we want to confirm in this meeting as far as some of these options there wasn't a lot of appetite for, or it didn't seem practical to really think this could happen at this stage in the progress. So some were showing as dropping at this point. It's not worth more discussion on certain options. Others are still legitimate options that there doesn't need to be something immediately done, so it's somewhat deferred. That this is something we can consider in the future. We want to focus on other options. And the ones that should be focused on now for the DOT to consider, plus your feedback at the end of this meeting, is what we want to make sure we capture correctly. So we took a stab at trying to summarize, and we really want to get your feedback on whether we're hearing what we heard correctly. So I know there's a lot of data here, and you do have the printouts, but the first two options are really terminating the CA. One is terminated and completed the way it is, and one is terminated and then kind of reevaluate what you're doing. And the immediate termination ones really seemed like there wasn't a lot of appetite or practicality in trying to get that done at this point. So we were thinking these should really be dropped from discussion. Option D was where we're going back to CRTPO on other improvements, and that's really not defined. So that option is always out there, but there's really not anything we can do right now unless somebody has another option that needs to be looked at. So we've kind of just dropped that as far as how we move forward for that option. Now the next 4 really pertain to doing a modification to the contract. This is C2, C3, C4, and C5. One is the frequent user discounts that we talked about. One is allowing trucks. The other is having HOT2 for a while. And then the last one was doing a modification to allow for a compensation event for an unplanned revenue facility. These are all still legitimate options, but at this point in time, we're saying let's defer those until we kind of work through the other options. They're less of a priority, and they can be implemented at any time in the process. So we didn't see a lot of appetite for those, and they can still be on the table for sure. But at this point, as the DOT is moving forward, they're less of a priority.
Let's go through all of them and then just double check sort of in the big chunks. So.
Sure, and then the ones that seem to have more appetite for, more desire, was the option that we talked about in combination with some of these other ones, where C1 is a express lane conversion, or 2 express lanes to 1 express lanes between 23 and 28. There seemed to be a strong desire for that location and a need. So that would be something that we still consider as we look at these in more detail. And And then, of course, option E, which is developing a strategy to purchase the project after completion. And then option F is the complete and delete option, where the project gets completed as a toll facility, gets purchased, and then you delete the tolling aspect of it at some point. And I guess that'll be evaluated throughout that process. So we're not sure if, again, that's how we interpreted the feedback we had gotten, so that the DOT can focus in on what's most important to this group as far as the options that really need to be looked at in detail and how they can report back.
On option C1, you would convert starting at exit 23. You'd still have, are you telling me there would still be 2 general purpose lanes between 19 and 23 under that option? 'Cause that's all that's there now.
Yeah, it would be
So you'd go,
it would be a conversion where
you go
you
4 to 3 to 2 and then back up to 3.
yeah.
And then back down to 2.
Does that need to be a motion? Because my kind of read from this group previously was we would take the 2 lanes, and one of them would be converted to general purpose, and one of them would remain a managed lane. And so that was really what I think we were looking at, because the 2 lanes run all the way down to exit 19.
Isn't that what you got in the option H? Which is on the screen right now.
Yeah, so I guess can we modify C1?
Bill, go to the, there's another slide after this one.
So this is kind of a follow-up on the newer options, which does extend that area where you're trying to get the 3 general purpose lanes. And we just talked about expanding these even a little further to make sure we have all the sub-options to kind of show piecemeal almost what it would take to kind of get that three general purpose lanes, whether it's a conversion or a straight addition. So we kind of grouped option G as the shoulder hardening and evaluating that, and that would be something that we'd look to try and move forward. We heard a lot of support. Of course, these all came out of the last meeting, so we're assuming these are on the forefront of everybody's mind, that we really need to kind of look at hard and how they could be incorporated, as well as the adding more capacity. And during the discussion, it was mainly over the exits 28 and 36. But we can go back and make sure that we're looking at the options to carry the 3 general purpose lanes throughout.
Yeah.
I think that's I believe the intent was to take it where they end at 3 general purpose lanes and extend that farther. And because it's different depending on which direction, I believe the northbound direction ends at 23, southbound ends south of that. There's a different offset, but I believe if we carry it forward as just extend the 3 lanes as far as possible,
I was just gonna
would
question.
cover that intent.
I was just gonna question on that. So basically, we'd have 3 general purpose lanes throughout the corridor and an express lane where it's able.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. I just wanna make sure we're all on the same page.
And the corollary of that would be where it wouldn't make sense to have 1 managed lane and then go down to 2 managed lanes.
Yeah.
You know, and then.
Can we go back just one, because I want to make sure to double check in terms of the first 2 categories. And again, people may take different colors, red, yellow, green, to mean different things. Obviously, in this context, we know about traffic signals, but do people have questions or concerns about the feedback from, again, the group that's been supporting you, trying to listen to what your interests and concerns are, that those first 3 options are the least interest, or some are entirely off the table, given the discussion you all have had so far? Does that make sense for how you look at things?
Yes.
Okay, I hear a couple of yeses. Second.
Head nod.
Head nod.
One clarification on option B, I think that from the general group's perspective, that wasn't something that's a primary focus, but with all the discussion about how do we look at the other needs within the region off of the I-77 corridor, how do we have a good process for identifying those, working with all the local governments, looking at needs. Although it's not in response to I-77, there's a general interest on how do we improve the localized planning process to make sure we're feeding all the needs correctly to the MPO.
Head nods and yeses.
Okay.
Second group, I'm sorry, could go back one, just double check on any questions or concerns about C2, 3, 4, and 5 as, again, reflecting the discussion of this group, that those are available but of lesser interest than the third category that have been put in green. Does this make sense to folks?
Yes.
Okay, I like to hear yeses, so just make sure we're aligned. And that's all I wanted to do, Phil, from here. If people have questions or comments about the 3, C1, E, and F, and then of course the ones that came up last time.
Could I ask for clarification on C5?
That was modifying the contract to allow for unplanned revenue impacting facilities. Meaning if in the future you look to do a conversion or add a general purpose lane within the airspace, you would try and negotiate that now versus at the time.
Gotcha, okay.
We didn't see the need to put a lot of
I
effort
think
into
most of us are more interested in, that'll be hopefully that'll be a non-issue by the time we get back.
It's actually part of some of these other ones. So that was our summary, and again, the H will be in subsets to make sure we're covering all those options to get the language that you were looking for with the 3 general purpose lanes.
Can I have a question? I like the idea of hardening the shoulders, but I'm concerned about these walls that are being built and how close are they? I mean, this is also, a good time that they could say, well, we could fix that and move the wall closer, so it would prevent that. Have you thought about that, or is that? I mean, I don't know if there's standards of building those walls where they have to be.
Yeah, they're typically set. That'll be part of the evaluation, though, all the impediments of hardening shoulders in case there's some shoulders that are narrow. What do you do? What's the fix in order to have a continuous beige shoulder?
Can we expect that there wouldn't be any change from the builder, that they wouldn't suddenly make them narrower just to prevent that?
No, they have to build them the standard, and they already have plans that have been released for construction. So if they want to make a change to that, they have to get that approved by the DOT.
Dovetailing on the hardening shoulder, if you have traffic on the shoulder, how do emergency responders, first responders get to accidents and injuries? Because now all lanes are clogged up.
Yeah, and that is one of the challenges with hardening the shoulders. And again, the hardening of shoulders would be to operate them in peak periods.
Right.
Yeah, but that's in the area.
And there would be some strategies you would look to set up for pull-off areas and so forth to make them as safe as possible. So they've had a lot of success in different areas using hardening shoulders, but you do have to do a thorough evaluation.
Mr. Phipps?
Yeah, I think you might have touched on my question about hardening of shoulders is the practical implications of if the car that breaks down if they wanted to pull over the shoulder. So,
That's the issue.
I don't know, do we have enough shoulder room to compensate for things like that?
So you have to have a shoulder for the shoulder.
So when you're operating the hardening of the shoulders, or shoulder running that it's called, you have to look out for those items and beef up your towing capacity. So if a vehicle does break down, you get to it quicker, you get that vehicle out of the way so that when you're ready to run during peak hours, you don't have those obstructions. But that's some of the challenges. It's not a normal general purpose.
I think a lot of us, and I've talked to a fair number of people in this room, but I think a lot of us view the hardening of the shoulders as a temporary fix as we work through the process. When we terminate the contract, we can't immediately convert and do all that stuff. There's some construction time that has to be there, and hardening of the shoulders was part of a solution to get us to a point that a lot of us see as 2 steps, right? Terminating the contract, then getting to where we want to be. And the hardening of shoulders facilitates the time of that couple of years.
And I would also hope that, because we've had a problem for several years where the lights weren't on, like the mix of 28 to uptown, and I go more than 100. And so if we can get lights on, maybe that can also reduce accidents at night, or during when it's raining and things like that. So, it's just, that would help as well. just takes one, but we could, you know, it's very dangerous at night. Thank you.
We're running ahead. I'm shocked, happily shocked that we're running ahead of what we planned for today. And so, unless there are other questions, here's what I'm going to suggest, and I know Bo would like to say a word or two as we move up to your individual input.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say that, you know, let's make sure we have enough time for everybody to go around, but we have enough time, so, so John, I think that's, you know, let's get started.
Right, and so, again, speaking of bonus allocations, instead of 3 minutes, I'm going to give a bonus minute. So at least as a starting point, and I'll start with Commissioner Puckett on this side. He pledged to me on the side that 3 or 4 minutes would work. He'll set the standard and then move around. If we do have some other time at the end for questions. The other thing is, one other piece compared to what you heard by email advisory members is if, in addition to the comments today, you wish to offer some additional thoughts in writing, that's an option as well. It would be sent to Carly, and I don't know what time frame we should offer.
Anytime.
Okay, anytime.
I would also look, and like suggest that we maybe let people speak as they want, because I, as a county commissioner, I want to listen to, like, our mayors and the people who live up here. I want to listen to them first.
Okay, it's perfectly fine if someone wants to pass and we'll come back to them, but just so people know the rough order, we'll start on this end, but that makes perfect sense. Commissioner Pocket.
Thank you. The extra minute I'll editorialize. And only a little. None of this speaks to the moral problem of the issue of taxing without having adequate infrastructure. This part of, we never talked about that because it just is a fact and there's nothing to change about it. So everything we do going forward, I think, has to reflect the piece of the unfairness of how we got to the day to begin with. Enough of that. There is, I think, near universal consensus. I've been dealing with this now for almost 5 years to the month. But universal consensus that this is a pig of a project. And even people who early on thought it made sense after evaluating it further now realize from a design perspective, not a philosophical perspective, but a design perspective, this just doesn't work. So what I would like to see, my first thing is I would love to see 4 lanes, general purpose lanes available for freight from I-40 to the state line, like we were promised. That's likely not to happen. The second would be complete and delete. That's likely not to happen. Neither one of those, I think, has financially or politically is possible, so I default to E, to the I, which is 3 general purpose lanes and 1 toll lane. The toll lane run by the Turnpike Authority. The revenue from that toll lane being used to repay whomever we would need to either borrow money from or set up a payment program, also to retire the debt, so that the toll from the 1 lane would pay back and would finance us getting out of it. So we're not asking anyone else to pay our way out of the problem. After I started to realize that would work, I talked to a number of people who could be impacted with it. The first person was Mayor Lyles a number of months ago. She completely agreed with that, as long as the only stipulation was that it would not impact other projects in the region. But to the extent that 1 toll lane, from a design perspective, she was completely on board with it. I spoke with Ron Tober, who was the guy who designed the CATS plans early on when this first started, asking point blank, 1 toll lane, would that provide you, that, in your opinion, would that provide CATS with the capacity to give guaranteed travel times? 1, not 2, and he said absolutely. It works for freight in that it adds some capacity to the general purpose lanes. We know that's an issue. I've talked to 3 or 4 different logistics experts and they say it isn't great, but if you can get more car traffic off the general purpose lanes, at least that helps us with what we have left. And then I would only say that, much like John Kettler said, I think we have to understand that this could delay the project a year or 2 or 3. And I am more than willing to wait 2 years or 3 years to get it done right than to default to a 50-year bad plan. So I would ask DOT to, in that interim time of 3 years, to look at hardening shoulders with the understanding that it's not a perfect solution and it does have problems with breakdowns and other issues, but we will deal with that for a year or 2 or 3 if we have to. Yeah, that gives us a little bit of relief as we go forward. And the last part of it is, there is not a soul that I've talked to who says this isn't a disaster on any level over the next 50 years. So it will have to be fixed. It will be fixed less expensively today than any time in the future. So we may as well just figure out how to bite that bullet and go forward. And I'm done.
With 3 seconds to spare. Thank you, Commissioner Coffin. Commissioner Coffin, you wanted to wait and hear from some other folks? Commissioner McNeely.
I'll go ahead. First, I'd like to thank everyone. We gave quite a bit of our life here in the last 7 meetings, counting this one here, to look at this project. I kind of feel like in the biblical sense, I'm the one that showed up at the vineyard a little late, but I still hope I'm safe.
We're still gonna pay you the whole amount.
Exactly. You know, there's a lot of history to this, and I've sort of come in at the end. I don't think this is what anyone in this region that is affected by it really wanted. I don't think it was asked for. I do like what the distinguished gentleman from Mecklenburg has said so far this morning, or this afternoon.
They were there before I got here.
You know, in an earlier meeting, I mentioned I felt like I was trapped, and I kind of still do feel like I'm trapped, but I've been trying to gnaw my leg off to get out of it. Because of the scope of the issue, I think that at some point, we're gonna have to look at the complete and terminate. And I think the termination may take up to 12 months after opening, so we figure out exactly how people are gonna use it and how to go about the buyout's gonna be. Because I think at that point in time, we'll have a better idea of what it's worth. So we may have to suffer for a little while in it, but neither do the scope. I'm willing, as Commissioner Puckett said, I'm willing to have 1 toll lane and 3 general purpose going down through there. I prefer no tolling lanes from 36 to 28, because I don't care what you say, everybody still likes to stop and look at the damn water. And we're gonna have issues, and so I want us to get through there best we can. I prefer to have a sunset on this, that someday, when this money from the toll pays off this project, we move on to some kind of other new fix. 50 years is a long time. I'll be 54 next month, about a month from now, and I don't think I'll see the end of this project if it doesn't get changed. It kind of reminds me of the saying my granddaddy once had, this whole thing. It's kind of like the skunk making love to a porcupine. This ain't a whole lot of fun for nobody, but maybe it's better than nothing. And I'm gonna end that on my talk on that. I don't know how much time I got left.
You're doing great. You're doing great. Keep going around, Mr. Curry.
If I could follow. Well, I recognize I have a minority opinion here. I just want to thank everybody for the civil tone that we've all had here. With a little retrospective first, I appreciate that this effort has provided opportunity for clarity on a number of issues, that have been friction points in the past. In fact, for example, the state continues to own the park, that the road, once open, can be modified over the next 50 years, and the contract indeed provides for elasticity in that regard.
Sorry, can you speak up a bit? I think with that some of the other folks have a hard time
The
hearing.
termination buyout costs are substantial. That the contract terms, including the length of the contract, are fair and reasonable when compared to other P3 contracts nationally. But the governor alone does not have the authority to cancel the contract and continue construction and simply convert the lanes to general purpose lanes. I don't think we've emphasized enough the public transportation elements associated with this. I appreciate what Ron Dover has to say, that a key part of the managed lane strategy is the public transportation component. It also plays to the economic mobility challenges that some face who don't have the wherewithal to look at different transportation options. Also, I'll mention that there have been a lot of statements made about I-77 being a local road, and I respect that. But I also hope that we all understand that the intent and the purpose of interstates is limited access and speed to enhance safety. And if we think about them as local roads, or indeed, some of you folks are elected officials that are involved in planning and zoning decisions, incorporate that into your plan decisions. I think that you need to think about how you're addressing safety when it comes to the interstate highway. My recommendation is to complete the project as contemplated and let it operate. Combination of termination costs and uncertainty as to the implications to construction schedules, government funding and approvals, environmental approvals, and the like are too great for a project that will be fully operational inside of a year. Despite criticism of managed lanes, they're operating successfully elsewhere. Allowing them to operate as envisioned will be welcomed by those who endorse them, and there are those, and though it may pleasantly surprise some who oppose them, but have never or only minimally ever experienced them. We should ask legislators and NCDOT to establish protocols associated with the process for funding, terminating, and buying out P3 contracts in general. This project should be routinely evaluated against an established set of measurable parameters to determine if the state is better off terminating the contract for convenience. Consideration should be given to making this part of the routine prioritization process. These parameters should include, is the managed lane strategy operating as envisioned, providing a reliable travel time alternative, including enhanced use of public transportation options? Do the terms of the contract end up unreasonably frustrating the ability to expand or modify the corridor to meet future needs? Is the project failing financially? Have changes in technology or work patterns or other factors so influenced how we move around that the managed lanes alternative is no longer useful to the point that it makes sense, and thus we should terminate the contract? So in short, in spite of the red associated with it, I am option D, and I would say that we should ask CARTCO and others to evaluate hardening the shoulders, allowing for larger vehicles, and enhancing park and ride options.
Thank you, Mr. Curran. Mr. Phipps?
Thank you. Unfortunately, Miss Ivory had a death in the family and couldn't be with us here today, so I'm representing her actually for the second time. See, this is my second meeting of this great group. I appreciate the in-depth conversation that you've had over the last several months. I want to thank Secretary Trotman and NCDOT and our consultants for their work in walking through each of the options. I wanted to piggyback off something that the gentleman from Mecklenburg County said earlier, Mr. Puckett. He made a statement that early on, when it made sense, I guess previous elected officials might have signed off on this. Well, I happen to have been a member of the Planning Commission at the time, and I was a representative to MUNCO at the time. And I was sitting in the meetings where people were lining up, tripping over each other to sign up for this project. So here we are today. And as I reviewed the options, several of the options that were considered had significant cost impacts and resulted in significant delays that I believe would be very detrimental to our region. While I'm open to a continued conversation, I believe we should allow the I-77 express lanes to open and continue to have NCDOT monitor them. And after they open, we can continue to assess if any further adjustments should be considered. I also wanted to echo the mayor's comments that we wanted to make sure that the impacts of any delay or financial cost, we wanted to get a better assessment on how that would affect the region. And I think continued conversation on some of these elements would give us the opportunity to do just that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hedward?
I wanted to keep this in bullet points because I think for me that helps. I guess I'm a combination option E, option I, which is basically this: complete the project, terminate the contract, and then modify. Number one, obviously, I believe we've got to complete construction because who knows what would happen if we deleted prior to the completion of construction. I also believe that, in my own personal opinion, is I do not believe we can tweak this contract to a level that is acceptable to the Lake Norman community. While I have a lot of respect for my colleagues here who do not live in this area, I will say I put a lot greater weight in the opinions of those who have day in and day out lived with the situation worsen over the last number of years. To the point where they used to say, when I used to say I live at Lake Norman, and they'd say, "Oh, you are so lucky." And now it seems I say I live at Lake Norman, and they say, "I'm sorry." and that is frustrating to me. The last thing I want to address, so to complete it, then I'll, with the remaining time, I'll do my editorial if that wasn't, but after we terminate the contract, convert the 2 general purpose, 2 toll lanes to 3 general purpose and 1 toll lane, managed lane. I believe that gives Charlotte, Ned, everybody in Charlotte the need for transit. I think that's a reality, and we need the mass bus transit, so I think we do that. And in the stopgap of that conversion, we harden the shoulders to help deal with the traffic that's going to happen over the next few years as we make this transition. I firmly believe we need to provide a 3rd general purpose lane across the lake. If we cannot get a 3rd general purpose lane across the lake, we sacrifice the toll lane for now, and then let CRTPO decide down the road how important is that managed lane across the lake. But the managed lane is important. The general purpose lane across the lake has to eliminate that bottleneck. The last thing I will say relative to that is removing, if we go to 3 to 1, and we did discuss it, remove some of those access points, which was to offset when we had so few access points. If you give us 3-1 and extra toll lane, extra general purpose lanes, I think it makes a lot of sense to remove some of those access points. I would even argue we might be able to get a 4th general purpose lane between 23 and 28 if we don't have all these weaves back and forth with the lanes we have. And I'll use the remainder of my time with the concept that we hear a lot and the goal of this project of reliable travel times. Of course, we all want reliable travel times, and buses need it for transit. But reliable travel times, and with this project as it stands, is reliable travel times for few. At the end, the unexpected or unfortunate expense of unreliable travel times for many. And I look forward to the day where I can travel in my community 20 hours a day. I get it. We all agree. 7 to 9, rush hour. 5 to 7, rush hour. Lake Norman wants the other 20 hours so that Lake Norman can have 20 hours of reliable time. I'll live with unreliable time 4 hours a day, so I don't have to live with unreliable time 24 hours a day.
Thank you, Mr. Hetler. Over to Mr. Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, members of the DOT and the consultants here for answering all of our questions and being responsible and so forth. When the governor announced the creation of the group, I was skeptical, to say the least. Over the past 3 years, 5 years in some cases, we've battled against this project. What I found is you all have been engaged, you've been present, you've been very responsive to our requests for information and data. Mr. Secretary, I've mentioned many times that the DOT has 0 credibility in the Lake Norman region. This presents your best and only opportunity to rebuild that trust and respect in the community. I agree we need 3 general purpose lanes. If we can go ahead and have 1 toll lane through the corridor, then that's fine. What I believe is here's an opportunity for the DOT, once construction is complete, to take over the corridor, buy it out, however that works. Smarter people will figure out the finances than me. That provides a consistent ownership, if you will, for the toll lanes in Mecklenburg County, because we know that Charlotte's going to be encircled eventually with at least 1 toll lane. So that provides that opportunity for you. The second thing that needs to be done is the projects that are funded by bonus allocations cannot be touched. You mentioned about how we need to get together and find out other projects, other means for the mobility across the region. That's the first, or foundation, if you will, of those projects funded by bonus allocations, so they can't be touched. The last thing I'll say is this project, when conceived and went through the process, it didn't follow the normal path back in the day. So it was an extraordinary project that went through extraordinary steps to get approved. Any changes to this project that you pursue needs to go outside of the normal way projects are done now, because again, of the extraordinary nature of this project. So again, I thank you, I thank the staff. I look forward to you reconvening this group in the summer to find out your path forward. Thank you.
Mr. Russell, Mr. Trico.
We thank everybody for coming, obviously, spending your time here working on this project. One of the dangers of going towards the end of the group is that every commentary you may have has already been said. So I'll keep this very short. My view on this is pretty simple. Complete the project, terminate the contract, go to a minimum of 3 general purpose lanes, and protect the advanced applications. That's about as simple as I can.
We appreciate it.
The king of brevity, and moving on.
This set of incident is difficult to be at the end of the road, but we are at the end of the road in Divine and Mooresville, and are anxious to have some relief. The comments back, obviously, thank you to the secretary. Your patience is to be commended, and professionalism has been just above and beyond with this group, and we appreciate everything that you and your entire team has done to bring this into our community. Let's talk about, as Mr. Trent said, eliminate some of the myth, legend, and fake news. It's been very helpful. We'd love to see the project complete. To his point, at least 3 general purpose lanes, however that mix comes out to be, but we've got to have 3 general purpose lanes. Our population growth continues to go every day. Just at Mooresville, we're adding about 50 households a day, or excuse me, a month. So we're growing quickly, and we're going to have more and more people commuting, hopefully from Charlotte up to Mooresville for employment. So we need this both ways. But in all of this we cannot be narrow in our focus of options for additional facilities. We are again, every community here is in growth mode. If we're going to, obviously, to buy out the contract would be phenomenal, as long as it doesn't have reports to our local governments and our residents to have any kickback from that. But looking at additional facilities, truck bypass around the lake would be ultimate. Take all of that pollution off of our lake, which we all drink from, would be phenomenal. But to really encourage some additional study with other facilities, small town level. And we're not finished growing. We need help. And if we could add for the contract, obviously, the hardening of the additional services and the, while we're going through all this, frequent or local user discounts. But I think that's pretty commonplace in most areas.
Thank you, Ms. Qualls.
I'll agree with Mr. Russell on one point. When this group was formed, I thought it was more political than pragmatic, and this is my second time I've been here. I'm sitting in for former Commissioner Cashin, and I will say thank you to the Secretary, to the consultants, and to everybody that's been on this board, because this thing grew legs and became a grown-up group, and I think a lot of good solutions have come out of it. I represent, as Ms. Qualls does, and Mr. McNeely do, a part of this project that is unique to any other part of the project. Highway 21 terminates at exit 28 and does not pick back up until exit 33. So we're handcuffed. In Davidson, we have 2 northbound, southbound corridors. That is Highway 77 and Main Street in Davidson, which is Highway 115. So looking forward, I'd like to see the toll lane stop, the managed lane stop at 28 and move to general purpose lanes all the way through 36. I think our folks every day in Davidson is a parking lot. We don't have any other options. To the Secretary's end on option 4, going back to CRTPO, and I promised Beth Cashin I would bring this up. I would like for CRTPO to revisit the flyover for Highway 21 to be reconnected at some point. But we are in a situation where general purpose lanes make more sense for us over that causeway corridor than anything else does. And lastly, looking to the future, where we are and where we're going to end up. Bonus allocation funds, we've got a project that's 3/4 done right now at exit 30. and it'll be completed. We have another connector that we're looking at down the road, and the uncertainty of what happens with those bonus allocation funds, it weighs heavy on us, because we again, are bound and trapped by the lake. So, again, thank everybody for the hard work that you devoted to this thing. It's impressive. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knox. Dr. Miltich.
Unfortunately, Commissioner Nass couldn't be here, and I hope I can do a fraction of the job he would do in this place. The town of Cornelius remains concerned about the plan design. The town has repeatedly requested a weed merge analysis for the total segment that has only 2 general purpose lanes. Not only have built up, but for the life of this contract, that was contained in our request to the NCDOT Secretary upon his request for our concerns, and our concerns remain unanswered. Consequently, the town of Cornelius can only support options that result in a minimum of 3 general purpose lanes before any consideration given to it adding an express lane to those minimum. General purpose lanes are the economic lifeblood of the community. By restricting this area just to 2 general purpose lanes, you're restricting the economic movement in this area, unlike any other part of Metrolina or any of the other metropolitan areas of the state or South Carolina. You're putting a tourniquet in an artery, and since this is a private P3, you're sticking a catheter and drawing blood out to boot, sending that money, that economic force elsewhere. Consequently, the only options we would consider would be the complete delete or the complete and modify. We certainly agree that that would give you the, by going to 3 general purpose lanes, we could remove some of these access points and make it even more efficient. Certainly, the interstate should not be used as a local road, but R21 is like South Boulevard in Charlotte. And imagine that if all of a sudden South Boulevard ended between Woodlawn and Clanton. It'd just be chaos. And that's what we have here. So, I think those are my points. Bonus allocation, this area has had a growth of 800% since the 80s, 600% since the 80s, but our road structure is essentially unchanged. We are really looking at Cornelius for these bonus allocation funds as a supplement to what our other infrastructure is sadly lacking. We do not have those touched. We felt the requirements were met, that funding for the P3 was granted. There is no provision for clawback in the state law that allowed for those bonus allocation dollars to be passed forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brady.
I wonder, I sit here and wonder, where would we be if we had not tried to at least step forward and do something? I know I lived in the research training area, younger part of my life, and when I go back and visit, I always wondered, after I moved here, and fought the traffic, I always wondered about the highways and the traffic in the Raleigh-Durham area. You could get on 70 from Raleigh and drive to Wilmington and take a nap while you're driving. And then come back here, you can't even look up at the billboard. So that always is back in my mind, and probably some political piece that goes with that. But I think we've had to step forward here to try to do something. I don't agree with where we are. I think we need to complete the project, and we need to work on trying to take out the contract and leverage what we can leverage with assuming the debt, bonds, having the, having the toll taken over by North Carolina, having only 1 lane and the rest of it open, and from 28 up to 36, that really is not a toll area. It's a halfway, so it needs to be all open, 3 lanes going across that lake each way. And we need to leverage what we can leverage. We'll find out assuming the senior debt if we can, and work toward maybe some bonds or whatever, and then have the revenue side produce it too. And that will help us get to where we need to get.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Back to Ms. Coffin.
Thank you, and thank you very much for Secretary Chargman. Thank you. Please thank our governor for allowing this to happen. Thank you for all of your work. I've probably been involved in this for 4 years or so, and it's just the only good thing about this is I have met amazing people in North Macon, and we have all met amazing people in North Macon. We have met people that we normally might not meet. That's the plus here, and so I always go back to the people. I'm certainly in agreement with about everyone here that we need 3 lanes, general purpose lanes, and all the way. And I do want to say to you, Dr. Miltich, when you made the comment about South Boulevard, I disagree with you because that is only one corridor. Charlotte has many corridors, very different than up here, where we do not have many corridors. If South Boulevard wasn't working, we would find a way. There's plenty of other ways to get out of north and south. That's what makes this unique.
That was the best of it.
I know, that's right, but that is what makes this unique. And I would also say your comments about, and I appreciate your minority part, Mr. Curran, and I represent the whole county, and including Valentine, and I know that has been your focus. And we all know, and I know, the people in Valentine know, and in South County, that the more this is a mess up here, they benefit. They benefit. And I certainly see that. And I certainly feel it when I'm driving this road. But this is a unique situation. This is a unique road. And this is, I don't really care when Eisenhower built the interstate program, that it was supposed to be for traffic and speed, but this one is really unique because of the lake. This is unique. I can't think of any other part of Interstate 77 where it is Main Street, but it is. Even how we talk about it, when I meet people, where do you live? Oh, I'm at 23. I'm at 25. I live at 28. I live at 36. That's what they say. That's what you say. The people in the other part of Mecklenburg County, they don't say that. If I get off 485 at Ray Road, I've done that for years. I have no idea what the number is. Because I have many other options to get home. You don't. And again, it's about the people. It's about the people. And I don't really care, we talk about the money, and all I can think of is when we did the revaluation debacle, which affected this area, along with Myers Park, but the county came up with over $100 million to refund, and we spent about $8 million on consultants. Nobody felt that $100 million. Nobody felt it. Schools kept going, the parks were open. The legislature, their budget is enormous compared to Mecklenburg County. And okay, it's gonna cost some money. Well, it's like if you have a car accident, you gotta pay for your mistake. Now, I would also say to my friend here, I remember you complaining a few years ago when you were talking to your governor and warning him about
Former governor.
Yes, former governor, and warning him about this road.
Yes.
And I remember you talking over here, you talked to my Republican colleagues about, you're gonna be gone if you don't get this fixed. And you told him. And I don't know if he just didn't receive that information or if you didn't do a good job in telling him that. But he's gone, and you were right. My governor, our governor now, he brought us together. I have more faith that he is going to do what's right. And I know what you said, Mr. Curran, that he can't unilaterally do that. I know that. But this is about the people. And we also have an election coming up, and this has got to be a big topic. And I brought my sign.
It's a universal sign. You take that a lot of places.
I take this sign came from the reval from this area. And I have used this sign in our county commission meeting. In fact, I had put it on my head about this road. It's not fair. It's not fair what has happened. And I appreciate that you're trying to clean up somebody else's mess, a prior administration. I know that. But the thing is, the bottom line is, a lot of people in 16 up here voted that normally would have voted for a Republican. They voted for Cooper.
Well, they didn't vote.
Or they didn't vote. Now, I think my governor wants to stay governor. I think he wants to stay governor, and I think that he's listening to us, and, you know, we're never gonna get everything we want. But anything is better than this. And I'm so proud of everyone who's participated in this. But again, I represent the whole county, and every time I come up here, it's just, and when I drive home with so many lights out, especially if it's raining, it's terrible, and I think about how awful it is, and I'm like, I only have to do this 2 or 3 times a week, and y'all have to do it several times a day. And it wears on people. It wears on people. And I have seen them suffer. And so I just, again, I support what Mr. Puckett said, what Mayor Knox said, what Mike said, what Mr. Hepworth said. And it's time to fix this. And if it costs more money, it costs more money. If it takes a little bit more time, it does. But we've got to get it right. The people have to know that they have been heard. So, thank you.
Thank all of you. So we've very kindly given of your time and focused the conversation as has been desired. And so we're moving to the last segment with the secretary. I believe we will be then finishing early, and any other kinds of informal conversations may continue. But the secretary will get to
Well,
close
first,
our meeting.
I'd like to say, did anyone want anything to add before we start? I know you get your
It's
time.
not like, that's an amazing night. One, and Ned, I appreciate what you say about interstate, but I will also, as Pat said, Pat is the #1 vote getter in the county, for those of you who have any political idea of where this is going. You know, it's unfortunate that the only road is an interstate, and that's just the fact. It should not be the way we have to get around. But to say that somehow or another it's an interstate, and so, you know, its main function is to get, you know, take care of speed, that is true, but it has also, no interstate was ever designed as being the only road in an area. It was added to adequate infrastructure, which we don't have. I would also state, just for, as we throw options out, if it is ever possible, environmentally, to add a 4th lane across the lake, I have no problem with that 4th lane being a toll lane. It's, you know, the line in the sand is there has to be 3 general purpose lanes across. But if there were a way to add a lane, I'm not opposed to that being additional revenue to help us dig our way out of this. So just for the record. And I think that's all that I would need to add. Thank you.
I just want to add one little thing, and I think I said it maybe at the first or second meeting. I think it was the first meeting. And in 1999, I came on the Iredell County's planning board, and I think I told you about COG, and they actually did a study. They started in and wanted to know if one more lane coming out of Charlotte, one more lane would help. And they came back to us after we paid them quite a bit of money and said, no, it's going to take 2 going each way, so don't even build any more if you're not going to do 2. And that was, to me, a great experience, first starting out in government, realizing, surely to God, one more lane would have helped. But they said, no, if you can't build 2, don't build it. And so we listened to their study, and we didn't build any. And maybe harp a little bit on what Ms. Cochran said just then. I feel like for years, we voted a certain way, and when a certain party was in party for a long time, they said, we ain't give you nothing because you voted that way. Then another party came in, and they said, well, we know you're going to vote that way, so we don't really care about you. You're old news to us. You're going to keep voting that way, so we don't need you. So we kind of feel, and no offense to any of the red-headed stepchilds out there in America, but that's what we feel like here. We kind of feel like we've been spit upon, because this is the last piece of interstate in a metropolitan area that has never been expanded.
Right.
It is pitiful never to be expanded in all these years. I'm 54 years old. When I was a young man, I used to go to Charlotte from Statesville for nightlife and whatnot. But at a certain point in time, it became way too much trouble. I can't tell you what kind of restaurants are in Charlotte right now. I go there maybe once, twice a year, and I don't live that far away. It's just not worth the pain. It's just not worth the pain.
I would like to add
Good ones in there.
Okay, hold on, I thought I saw Mr. Hepworth's hand.
Yeah, I
Hand
just-
back to Ms. Coffin, and then back to the secretary.
I did bring this up in my points because I didn't want to run out of time, but we have talked about it here and Mr. Puckett has been a cheerleader for it, but I firmly believe the issue of commercial truck traffic cannot be overemphasized. Cannot be overemphasized, regardless of the cost, the economic development of North Iredell, Southern Yadkinville County, and the I-40 corridor. They're the ones that are gonna lose way beyond just Lake Norman. So maybe Lake Norman feels the pain today, but the people feeling the pain will be expanding going forward.
Ms. Coppin?
And I just wanted to emphasize that probably a majority of the people here, not everyone, we don't want to have anything that has to go to CRTPO. Let me say that again. Several of us, we don't want anything that has to go to CRTPO because of the way that is structured. And I know that is structured federally, I believe. Right? So we can't change that. But we are at an extreme disadvantage. So we have to, that's why it was easy to avoid the first ones you had because it had those magic letters, CRTPO, and we don't want any, we can't stop there because then we go to jail. We don't go to like a Monopoly game, then we go the wrong way. So that was the only thing I wanted to add. Thank you.
I stood on CRTPO, and a couple months ago, I asked them, are we in a position to change things rapidly if this contract were to be changed or terminated? And I got a blank stare. CRTPO is an aircraft carrier. It's not designed to change on a who and a dime. So whatever solution we come up, hopefully the state will create a mechanism to proceed further, faster than with CRTPO. It's an extraordinary event, requires an extraordinary solution.
Checking one last thing for hands. Back to the Secretary.
Well, I wanted to start out by thanking everyone personally for your service, your sacrifice, and serving on this group. Not that I anticipate this will be the last meeting, but the last one that we asked for your commitment for. But this has been very important. First, and I want to thank every one of you individually because you'll never hear from me or anyone at Turnpike or DOT that, that opinion's not true because transportation's like life. It's true from your perspective, and we value all the input because it's true from where you see it, where you sit, what your experiences are. So we definitely want to recognize it because that's important for everyone. And so first I want to thank you for your service and thank you for being respectful to everyone here because, your opinions are very important. I think that the key to success in this process is engagement, seeing the ideas, hearing all the perspectives, and then how do we take those and develop the possible ways ahead. And so that's what we're going to do. I think I've clearly gotten all the preferences, so we're going to go back. And my goal is, and I was fortunate with the number of years I've served with the department to be on the team that said, let's solve the problem that we had at the Yadkin River Bridge. Let's solve the problem how we couldn't close 485. You're going to get that kind of idea, innovation. My goal is what can we do under existing law to be the most innovative that we can with the quickest solutions that we can that improve all of and each of these concerns that we've heard from the local government's perspective, the business community's perspective, and each of the counties and the chambers. So that's my pledge. I anticipate, I think we've got enough detail where we can put a lot of analysis behind it and then come back somewhere around the end of July is what I'm going to target. But I want to be able to provide a roadmap with here's how we believe each of these will play out. And then the schedules would be, not kind of the overall template, but one addressing each of the particular alternatives. The beauty is if we would have taken Jim's report from Mercator back last fall and given it to us, our plan was we're going to do this analysis and hopefully we'll have a roadmap by the end of the year. I'm glad we didn't do that because we've learned so much in the process on where all the choke points are, what's the preferences. So although it's taking us a little time, I think it's all time well invested. So you have our commitment, and you'll anticipate, we'll ask to reconvene, and you'll see what our product is with a lot of hard work moving forward sometime in late July. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, members of the advisory group. Hold on a moment there, Mr. Pocket. Thank you for RSMH, Turnpike Authority, and NCDOT officials who supported this whole process. Would you like to have one final word before I cut people loose, Mr. Pocket?
I appreciate it. I appreciate you mentioning the Yadkin River Bridge, because that is the very best example going forward as to what this is. This is a self-inflicted wound. The last thing I would say though is, talk about under existing law, and I would encourage you, if you bump up against existing law and law needs to change, there are people in this room and other people outside this room who would be very interested in hearing what that change might need to be so that we can continue to work to give you more flexibility.
I've always found our lawmakers are more receptive when we've maximized our existing authority to the greatest extent possible first.
Sure.
So
But I've
that'll be
also
the plan
found
that
that
we can
they get
identify.
reelected every 2 years, so they are willing to tweak the law when it's in the way of the constituents.
Hey, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.